For over 10 years, I couldn't get my productions to sound how I wanted, so I buried myself in online tutorials trying to figure out why, and even having some of the same tools as other producers and mixers I envied, my productions weren't coming even close. I've heard the term referencing get thrown around, and I thought I was referencing the right way myself, but I was totally wrong, and over time developed a referencing system that would help me produce any desired result. I'm excited to announce that you can now use this same system yourself in our new course, The Magical Guide to Referencing. This gives you the exact framework I've used and successfully taught hundreds of students through the years. If you're ready to stop chasing your mixing tail in circles and ready to understand any mix you hear to replicate those same results for yourself, you can find a link to the Magical Guide to Referencing in the description wherever you're listening. See you there, my friends.
This episode of Working in Music Sucks is brought to you by Plugin Alley's weekly recall newsletter. Get tips, tricks, updates on sales, and so much more weekly. You can find a link to sign up in the description of this episode wherever you're listening. Now, let's get to the show. Plugin Alley presents Working in Music Sucks, the show where we talk about what sucks about working in music so you don't have the same problems. I'm your host, John Maciel, and if you're a returning listener, we're so glad you're here. You can do us a favor and drop a like if you're listening on YouTube, or leave a positive review if you're listening on iTunes. We greatly appreciate it as it helps us get the podcast in front of more people who could benefit from it. And if you're a brand new listener, so happy you're here. And in today's episode, my friends, I want to talk about something that's a pretty simple topic, but there's multiple ways to do it. And I always see this conversation pop up in different forums, and it's backing up your files. And it's one of those things that when you're starting out, maybe you have like a laptop, but you're running all your session and everything. You're running all your sessions through just the desktop computer or your laptop hard drive, right? Maybe it's like 500 gigabytes or a terabyte, but I would highly, highly recommend everyone invest in multiple drives. So you should have a separate working drive, another backup drive, and then an archiving drive and a cloud drive. So the working drive is going to be, like a 1 terabyte minimum drive that you can store your session files on. And in the show notes, I'll leave affiliate links to a Samsung drive that I like and a SanDisk drive that I also like. They're portable drives. They're USB-C, but they're just great for storing your session. Now, a backup drive is going to be something that has, like, let's say 5 to 10 terabytes. And after you're done with a record or a session, you're going to want to clone that information or just copy and paste it to a backup drive. And that backup drive is essentially where you're going to just keep everything that you're working on. And you can use a program on Mac called Carbon Copy Cloner that at the end of the day, you can just sync it and it will automatically copy the day's files over. And after you've done that initial transfer, the following transfers just basically copy files that don't already exist. So it's not like a new transfer every single time. An archiving drive is going to be, again, another like 5 to 10 terabyte, if not more, hard drive that once you're done with the record and all the sessions and all the stems, the bounces and everything, you save them into a folder and then you zip that folder and then you're going to put them on an archiving drive. And that archiving drive you're going to have listed by year, by month, so you can easily go back and find the records you worked on in what year and what month, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's going to be where you just store everything. So in case anyone ever comes back from, the woodworks or anything, you can easily find it in your archive drive. I know a lot of people like to use like smaller drives to archive, like, if the session was like didn't take that many gigabytes, so like a 250 to 500 gigabyte session, they'll buy another 250 to 500 gigabyte drive and throw it on there. I think that's going to just add up to a lot of space depending on how busy you are. So I'm more of the mind of just get like a big 10 terabyte drive and then get a drive bay and you can just have them all in there. And then next is the cloud drive. So there's 2 ways to go about the cloud drive. You could use it as a working drive, as a backup drive, but I wouldn't recommend it as an archiving drive. Like, I still believe you should have like a physical drive that you store files on. But the cloud drive is like something like Dropbox. Like with Dropbox, you can, if you wanted to, you can work your sessions off of Dropbox on your system and use that as your external drive if you wanted to. And it also acts as like a backup drive because everything updates to the cloud drive. I would also recommend that if you're going to use a cloud drive in that sense, that you do have like a physical drive that everything lives on as well, and you use something like Carbon Copy Cloner to make sure that everything's there. But I worked on a Google Drive a Dropbox, and also, Google Drives natively on a computer for years, and I still do to this day. And I've never had an issue personally. I know the concept seems foreign to a lot of people, but it's actually really helpful, especially if you're working remotely with another producer and you need to have access to the same files and everything. Just work off of a cloud drive and it makes everything easier. And Dropbox and Google Drive do it fairly well. I will say that the way Dropbox works, it does better in terms of remembering where files are. However, the way Dropbox works is it takes up space on your native hard drive, whereas Google Drive acts as a virtual hard drive and it only caches I think up to 200 and 250 gigabytes on your native drive. And then the files are in a cloud and it acts as like a virtual hard drive essentially. So depending for video files and things of that nature, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like Google Drive is much more efficient than using Dropbox. Dropbox for records is fine because it doesn't take up that much space. But either way, you want to use those type of systems. Now, in terms of archiving, there are other programs out there too. So aside from like your archiving hard drive, you could use programs like Backblaze that help you back up the computer. So in case anything were to happen, you don't lose files, you don't lose archive files. And there's also something else called Amazon Management Console that a lot of companies use. And you can use that as a way to store your files as well. It lives on a server that's very, very secure. And you can create your own server too. It can get really nerdy, but you want to make sure you build these systems so that your files are always backed up and you're keeping versions based on if you're outsourcing, if they're being edited. You don't want to have like one session file. Like you don't want one Pro Tools session. This is like Pro Tools song name, project name. Like you want to create versions. So it's like if you're doing drum recording, then you call it the song name _ drum recording and then _ drum editing. So you can follow each step of the process back, and the way your DAW recalls the session files is always different as well. And then you're backing up those files and everything. So if there's any weird edits, you can always refer back based on your backup system. And I'm trying to think, like it's just, multiple drives are important, but I think it's overkill to have like a drive for every session. I know a couple of producers who that's how they operated. And I was just like, whenever they had to pull a drive, they're like, I don't even remember where I put it. I didn't label it. I'm like, why don't you just keep it all in like a server drive and then a bay, like a physical bay for your hard drives. And then that bay is backed up to like a actual like server database, like the Amazon Management Console that stores all those files as a backup to it too. So if anything happens, like you have a physical backup and a cloud backup as well. So this was actually a really short episode. It was pretty cool. But if you're not already working this way, you should be working this way. And if you're not thinking about this stuff, you should be thinking about this stuff. So if you found this episode nerdy and helpful, please share it with a friend. If you want to continue talking anything nerdy and hard drive related, how to maybe name files, things like that, find a link to the Plugin Alley Discord server in the description wherever you're listening. And until next time, remember, working in music sucks, but it doesn't have to with what you learned from this episode. Until next time, friends.